To be or not to be? That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune,
or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing, end them.
to die, to sleep no more, and by a sleep to say,
Say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks that flesh is heir to.
'tis a consummation, devoutly to be wished. To die,
To sleep. To sleep. Perchance to dream. Aye. There's the rub.
for in that sleep of death what dreams may come, when we have shuffled off this mortal coil, must give us pause. Hello, and welcome to week 10 of 5225, 52 weeks of loving movies. Week 10 is Shakespearean films, and let me just get the disclaimer right out of the way. I have the flu, so this is probably going to be pretty short, and I don't know if I'm going to have a lot of really incredible thoughts to share, but please stick with me. And due to a combination of depression and the flu and just not having time, Shakespearean Week really didn't turn out the way I thought it was going to. I was going to watch several different Shakespearean adaptations of different plays, and I thought I might, watch some that are kind of offshoots of it or loose adaptations of it, also to kind of fill in between. But it turns out I just watched 3 different versions of Hamlet. One of them is a documentary. It's not really a version of Hamlet, though I will get into that a little bit later. But so it's Hamlet 3 ways rather than Shakespearean Week. But that's just how it turned out. So I do apologize for that in advance. So let's get into our first film for this week, which was 1996's Hamlet, directed by Kenneth Branagh. Hamlet 1996 was actually one that I hadn't seen, and to kind of give you a little bit of history for me, I read Hamlet for the first time before ever seeing it performed or anything, or seeing any movies based on it or anything. Well, I thought before seeing any movies based on it, but I'll get into that. I saw it I read it in junior high, and I fell in love with it. I absolutely loved it. It's still to this day one of my absolute favorite plays of all time. I really loved that the kind of the intrigue and the ghosties and just this character who is pretending to go crazy, but also might kind of be going crazy, and this obsession that he gets over, justified obsession, but just this obsession that goes throughout the play, that has just terrible consequences for him and the people around him. It's one that I've always loved, and having seen it now several times performed on stage, and seen movie versions of it. My teacher actually, not my junior high teacher, but I think we read it again in high school maybe, and that teacher showed us the Mel Gibson, the Zeffirelli version of Hamlet starring Mel Gibson, which back then I thought was pretty good. I have since come to find other versions of Hamlet a lot better, including 1996's Hamlet by Kenneth Branagh. When, as I mentioned, this is a first time watch. I hadn't seen it, and I thought, as I mentioned before, I had never seen any versions of Hamlet before I read it. But I remember one time I was telling one of my friends, he was an older friend, he was a guy from church. I was telling him about how we had read it and how I loved it, and talking about the things I loved with it, and he's like, I was like, yeah, it's one of my favorites. That's probably my favorite play now. And he said, well, you just like The Lion King a lot. He was making a joke, but it was that moment that I realized, holy crap, The Lion King is based on Hamlet, which I didn't know back when I was watching before, because of course, because I had never read Hamlet and I'd never seen Hamlet, and I didn't really know much about it, except for um, some famous references to it, like "Alas, poor Yorick," which is usually, which I had misquoted for a long time, because most of the time it's misquoted. It's usually quoted as "Alas, poor Yorick, I knew him well," but it's "Alas, poor Yorick, I knew him, Horatio," which I made sure to tell everyone as soon as I found out. But pardon the flu. If you hear some sniffling or coughing or anything, that's what's going on there. But yeah, so I had never actually gone back to watch this one for several reasons. Number one, it's 4 hours long, and although I'd seen long versions of Hamlet to do the stage plays and stuff like that, I just never really got around to it. And I'll be honest, the cover of it, I was like, this feels like it's not really going to capture Hamlet for me, because it's all very like clean and proper, and it just felt very not how Hamlet felt to me, which was gritty and dark, and stuff, which is why the Zeffirelli one felt right, because it was very dirty and dark and stuff. But now I kind of realize that, yeah, that version doesn't really do justice to the play in the same way that 1996 Hamlet does. I will say this, that I think there are some aspects of this version that don't really feel like they understand Hamlet, at least in the same way that I understand Hamlet. And that's not to say I understand it better, but just in my interpretation of the story, kind of feels like it doesn't really follow Hamlet in the way that, or at least it doesn't interpret Hamlet in the same way I do. So there's a little bit of that in there, but for the most part, I think it's a really stunning, uh, adaptation of the thing. Because the one aspect about it, which is pretty cool, is that this is the first and maybe only movie adaptation that covers the entire play. It covers everything. That's why it's 4 hours long, and which I think is really, really cool, and it covers a lot of ground, and it really helps sell a lot of what's happening in the story. I think sometimes it might take away from some of the bigger set pieces, because it's so long, and because it might feel like less impactful, because something else kind of shows that same imagery, or shows it in a very similar same concept in a similar way earlier in the film. But for the most part, overall, I think this is really an epic, incredible adaptation of this thing. As far as the performances go, I think the performances of this are really good. What's really cool is that this is like star-studded. Like, there are so many really great actors who do like little bit parts. Jack Lemmon, who is in one of my absolute favorite movies, The Apartment, plays a character early on in the movie. Billy Crystal is one of the grave diggers. Robin Williams is in there. There's Richard Attenborough. There's just a bunch. It's star-studded. There's just so many stars at the time that are in this film. And Kate Winslet obviously plays Ophelia, but this was really early in her acting career. So she hadn't done Titanic yet. Titanic was the next year. And so which, if you watched me on the 1995 episode of Picture This over on the Dill Pickle Movie Network, we kind of talk about her in Sense and Sensibility, and how that was 1995. Her next film was probably, this is probably the one that got her to Titanic. That was probably her next film. And I think that is true, that may have been the performance that got her to Titanic. But this was between Sense and Sensibility and Titanic. And I think that this probably had a lot to do with it as well, because she does a really great job. The Kenneth Branagh performance, I think, is really, really good. I have seen better performances of the character of Prince Hamlet by actors who are a little bit more nuanced in their performance, who are maybe a little bit more conservative, a little bit more a little bit less flashy and big with their performance. I think that there's a lot that in Hamlet's character that lends to smaller moments that maybe Kenneth Branagh did not take advantage of. But that doesn't take away from how really incredible his performance is. I've seen a lot of people talk about self-indulgence and that what an exercise of self-indulgence this movie was, and they're not like wrong. Like it is true, but I don't understand the problem with self-indulgent. It's art. Art should be self-indulgent. I think that people who talk like that are also the types of people who enjoy film as an art. So I don't really understand the mindset of being upset about something being self-indulgent. I understand not enjoying it because the self-indulgence maybe doesn't work for you, but that being a criticism doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because it should be, it's art. It should be indulgent in most cases. Some cases, as I mentioned before, restraint is a good component for art, but I think self-indulgence is not a criticism for something like this. But overall, I really did enjoy it. I'm sorry, I'm sure I could say a lot more about it, but I am kind of dying right now, so I'm going to move on to the next film, which was a rewatch. It's one that I've seen many times. It's a movie that I absolutely love, and that is Tom Stoppard's Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. I love this movie, and I saw this movie before I ever saw a version of the play, so that might lend to why I love it so much, because there are better versions. This is a story better told on stage, and I will absolutely admit that I've seen versions of it for the stage. It absolutely makes more sense on the stage. It works a lot better on stage for the most part. I think there are a few things that work better in film. I'm not going to list anything that works better on either one, but I think that there are things, for the most part, it works better on stage. I also don't care. The wordplay and the verbal action moments in this film are really, really work for me. They work really well for me. I will say that there is that the film, while the stage works better for the meta, there are some things within the meta narrative that I think work really well in film, like when it cuts from them flipping the coin to them being covered by the tapestry as Hamlet and Ophelia are chasing each other. That stuff does work work well in film, but for the most part, it's definitely through stage. I know I went back to something I said I wasn't going to talk about anymore, but there we are. But yeah, the incredible writing, it's just very funny. Those two characters, Tim Roth and Gary Oldman, are just so funny and so good. I love the little bits with Rosencrantz or Guildenstern. Who knows? It's Rosencrantz. Rosencrantz, Gary Oldman's character, discovering physics a lot. Like, he keeps coming across things that are physics based and experimenting with them, and just delighting in the fact that when he gets further down in his bathtub, the little paper boat that's in there with him rises, or that when he lets the little potted plant go, it does the Newton's cradle thing where it pops the one on the other side out, all that stuff. Apple falling on his head, like there's just a bunch of like physics stuff, that laws of motion, that really I enjoy watching in this film. Ian Glenn plays Hamlet, and while he's not my favorite Hamlet or my favorite Batman, he does play Batman on what is it, Titans, which I think is interesting that he has played two vengeance-based sad boys in different films. But this movie isn't really about Hamlet. It's about Rosencrantz and Guildenstern and the them trying to find their place in this story while also realizing that they are in a story and trying to catch up with it and trying to understand what they're supposed to be doing there. And at some points not remembering, being sure which one is which, because other people aren't sure which one is which, and they're not sure if they understand, if they believe their own memories on any of this. It's just, there's the meta narrative, the writing, the wordplay, just everything about this just makes me so giddy, and I just love watching it. No, it's not a perfect film. Yes, it's better on stage. I don't care. I love it. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. Which is going to lead me on to the third and final movie that I watched, which is Grand Theft Hamlet, which is a documentary. It's about two UK actors who, during the pandemic in 2021, were out of work because the theaters were all closed, and they both got really into Grand Theft Auto Online. And one day they find a theater, the amphitheater in that game, and they decide, hey, why don't we try to stage a version of Hamlet in the game? And so they go off and they do auditions, and things go wrong, and people think they're crazy, which is a fun parallel to Hamlet. While this isn't an adaptation of Hamlet, I'm including it in number one because a large portion of the play is depicted in this film. I also, like, there are elements of the movie that kind of mirror the events of the play. If we consider the pandemic to be Claudius and the theater to be King Hamlet, with the pandemic took out the king, and now they have to basically take back what is theirs, which is their career, their desire to perform. And people think they're crazy, and they go through a lot where people are not think that this is that they're crazy for doing this, and they are a little bit crazy for doing this. And then it bleeds into their, while they aren't necessarily crazy, their obsession with this project starts to bleed into their lives and starts to affect the people around them. And it's very interesting. Every drop of this movie, up until the credits, I believe, takes place within Grand Theft Auto Online, and that's about all I'm going to tell you about it, because I think people should go watch it. It's really good, and it's I think it's a really great film. I'm not surprised it has gotten the acclaim that it's gotten so far. It's really remarkable, and I think people should go watch it. And if you love Hamlet like I love Hamlet, it's fun to see them try to stage this production, and to see the parallels between the play and the film that's going on. But that's all I'm really going to cover on that. Have you seen Grand Theft Hamlet? Tell me in the comments how you felt about Grand Theft Hamlet, and if you could see some of the parallels between the play and the movie. Have you seen 1996's Hamlet? What do you think about Kenneth Branagh? What do you think about the other performances in there? Do you think that they're like that he gets it, or do you think like me that maybe he doesn't? I know he gets it, but if that his interpretation is a little bit different than yours, or if it's the same, or if you dig that. And Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, I know that it's better on stage. Don't tell me that. But how do you feel about it? Have you seen it? Do you think it's funny? Like I think it's funny. What do you? How do you feel about that? Talk to me in the comments about that. Let's talk about next week. Now next week, it actually is a new it. It is not was not originally on my list when I released the list to the public. Even my friend Dylan, who is watching this right now, who you saw earlier at the beginning of this video, um, uh, he had sent me some recommendations for everything. This was not on the list when he sent me those recommendations. So, Dylan, if you want to send me some more recommendations in the comments here, please do. But week 11 is going to be modern retellings of classic literature. And that's going to include modern retellings of Shakespeare and plays and stuff like that. I just want to go with retellings of classic literature and plays that are set in modern day. And that's really the goal that I'm going with. So something like Lion King wouldn't work because it's not as far as I know, modern day take on it. Although who knows? It's just animals. Who knows when it takes place? I guess the fact that we didn't see any humans coming in and disrupting their habitat might say that it's not modern. And before I go, I do want to thank Dylan Randazzo of the Dill Pickle Movie Network, who helped me out with the to be or not to be speech at the beginning. I asked him to send me his little performance so I can interlace them, and I don't know if it was weird or not, but it was enjoyable for me, so that's why I put it there. I'd like to thank you, Dylan, for taking the time to put that to record that for me and to bring it out. Your performance truly gave me skills. Your performance truly gave me chills. You're becoming one of my favorite actors of all time. So just live with that and don't disagree. Tell me in the comments, what are some classic stories that are retold under a modern lens? What are some of your favorites that you love? Talk to me in the comments. Bye.